This is Ground Affected. My name is Brent.
And welcome to a selection of cooked meats.
And this video has been one that people have been asking about for a very long time. But before we get into the video, I'd like to suggest you like and subscribe to the channel. If you find that by the end of this video, I have not earned that subscription or even your like, I'll give you instructions for what to do in the last few seconds of the video. On every other video, I get asked the question, how do you prepare your 3D prints? And this is the video in which I show you how I prepare my prints. Granted, this is a miniature, but the exact same concept applies throughout any size statue or model that I make. And prints in this case means resin prints. I'm not going to show you how I deal with my FDM prints. I'll do another video in the future about how I deal with those. Firstly, this is not rocket science, and if you have your own way or your own methods, or you see something that I do which you think could be done better, then please leave your comments in the below section of the comments section. And now let's just get straight into the video. I've recently been printing these miniatures from C27 Collectibles. There will be a link for C27 in the description below. I've also been testing them out on my Nova 3D Benny Mono 4, of which I feel like I should probably do a video about this in future. For the first part of removing them from the printer, the best thing to do is to put on a pair of gloves. This will prevent you from getting the toxic resin on your skin. I then have a tub prepared for me to be able to remove my prints, and I use the metal spatula. Make sure to use the flat side towards the plate and the beveled side towards the print. This will help you get it underneath the raft and just pop it straight off. I always scrape my build plate after I've taken the print off. This just ensures that I get rid of any bits and pieces that may crack my screen or break my FEP. Then replace the build plate immediately, and I close the lid of my printer so that no more light gets into the machine and ruins the rest of the resin. I then dump my prints into 99% RPA alcohol. I have two of these Tupperwares. The first one is the more dirtier RPA, and the second one is the cleaner. So the resin filled model goes into the dirty RPA, and then from the dirty RPA it goes into the cleaner RPA for a thorough clean to make sure there is absolutely no resin left on the model at all. Agitating the model in the alcohol will help to remove as much of the resin as possible, and I take it out and place it onto some paper towel and let it dry. It is now safe for me to start removing the supports on this model. I'll use warm water in my sink in order to soften the supports. This helps me remove the supports a whole lot easier. At this point there is no longer residual resin. These parts have been cleaned completely before they go into the sink. I use a knife, I use tweezers, I use whatever I need to use on careful smaller bits so that I don't snap off fragile little parts. And this is the model straight after the supports have been removed, and now it goes to dry once again. I cure and then throw away the support material, and then I allow my model to dry even more. Once it's fully dry, I will switch on my UV lights. This is just a standard nail bar, and these are really cheap on Amazon. I leave them in there for around 15 minutes per side, so roughly 25 to 30 minutes all over the entire model, and then I take it to be cleaned. Usually I will not do this on my painting table, however in order to record this I have to use my painting table. So using three main tools to do this job, and those are going to be an 800 grit sandpaper, a 1200 grit sponge sandpaper, and a blade, a sharp hobby knife or a blade of some kind. The blade is very important to use for scraping bits. This is going to help you cut off pieces that are perhaps too big for you to sand down. Using the thicker, more rough sandpaper, I'm going to sand off bigger parts, larger pieces that need to get a lot more attention to them before I can start going into a finer sandpaper. And using the sponge sandpaper, which is super fine sandpaper, it's easy to get it around parts on the model and get into creases and gaps and fold over things, and it just works super well. This sponge sandpaper is one from Tamiya. If you just search Tamiya sandpaper or Tamiya sponge sandpaper, I'm sure you would find it on the internet. I go back and forth between all three tools and whatever I need to use to get into gaps sometimes, but I go through and make sure that I remove all the support material and sand everything that needs to be sanded. I then take alcohol and one of my children's toothbrushes, and I spray the alcohol onto the model, and I gently brush the model. At this point the model is cured, so you probably won't damage it by brushing it with a brush. Obviously be careful not to knock off any pieces that are really thin or might break with too rough of a brush. Brushing it with alcohol helps to flatten the surface and makes your eye able to see if there are any more imperfections that you can then go back and remove later. I printed off the wall that Miles was going to be standing on, and I ended up with a couple of print issues. This could be from my lift speed being too high, or perhaps the support may not be completely adequate for this specific model. However, it's a super easy fix and very superficial. I use the rougher sandpaper and I sand it down until it gets right past the deepest of scratches, and then I use the toothbrush to brush out all the dust from the sanding previously, and then I use the softer sponge and I go back and smooth it all off, and again I use the alcohol and I wipe it down with the toothbrush so that I can see if there are any other imperfections. And this is the final 3D printed Miles Morales in miniature form. I never measured him, but I feel like he came out around a 75mm size. And I can't wait to paint this guy in a future video. Now I realize that that was a miniature. However, like I said, the exact same procedure is used on a miniature or a quarter scale statue. I do the exact same procedure using the same methods, and this is how I prepare my prints before I start to paint them. If you enjoyed that content, make sure to give a like and perhaps consider subscribing if you didn't already. And if you would like to support the channel even more, then go and watch another video of mine. But if you feel like this channel deserves even more support than you're currently giving, then please have a look at the Patreon, which we have linked in the description below. If you join the Patreon, you do get nothing, but you do get access to the dopest Discord in town. There is no other painting community as epic as ours. And if you want to be part of that community, the only way you can get in is by joining the Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, I've got a couple new patrons I need to shout out for in this video. Jason Branham, Simon Richards, Timothy Day. I must thank you dudes so much for your support. Without your support, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able to blind myself with these lights that I have currently blinding my eyes. And as per usual, if you found any of this information helpful, or you think it could help a friend, then be sure to share the video with one of your pals. Also, if you're one of those who just didn't even like a single thing about it all, then there's only one thing I have left to say to you. In fact, if you ask anyone in the community, they'll say the same thing. If you don't like it, click the dislike and f*** off. I can't wait to paint this Miles. This is going to be the sickest little miniature I've ever done.